Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Today I'm going to talk to you about an article that came out this week in the CBC which featured an interview with Darcy Dobson. Miss Dobson is the daughter of Heather O'Brien, who was one of the victims of the mass shooter. And in the article, Miss Dobson says two things. First of all, that she's not sure yet whether she's going to be testifying during the commission proceedings, and secondly, whether her lawyer is going to be able to ask questions of other witnesses. She still doesn't know that yet. Here we are, less than 2 weeks away from the beginning of the proceedings, which are scheduled to start on February 22nd, and there's still these questions outstanding. So that, of course, in itself is an issue, but there were two things about the interview that struck me as legally relevant. One is just the issue of victim family members testifying and the reasons why that's important. And secondly, the issue of the Ready alert system, the Alert Ready system, which was the system that sends out alert messages to everybody's mobile phones and can be used in a geographic area to alert people to whatever kind of situations. Now that got a lot of attention at the time in the immediate aftermath of the mass shooting because the emergency alert system was not used. And some people may presume that that's all been fixed, but it hasn't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and about why I think Miss Dobson should be testifying. So I said that Miss Dobson is a daughter of Heather O'Brien. Now, Miss O'Brien was killed on the morning of April 19th, so this was not right in Portapique, but in one of the roads nearby. Miss O'Brien lives in Masstown, and she was a Victoria Order of Nurses nurse, which means that she goes to provide service to people, healthcare to people in their homes. Now, she wasn't working that morning, but she had developed a practice. Now, this was early in the pandemic, as you'll recall, that every Sunday morning she would go and drive around and visit her grandchildren. She had 8 children and 12 grandchildren, and she would go to their homes, stand in the yard, and have a visit with them through a picture window. Of course, people remember what that was like. Now, actually that morning, like I said, she wasn't working, but she did call a friend of hers, a fellow VON nurse, and offer to do some of the visits that were sort of on the eastern side of Portapique because some of the road closures, she thought her friend wouldn't be able to get to those other spots. So sounded like a really wonderful person, a kind person. And unfortunately, when she was driving from Masstown to Debert, she came across the scene where Gabriel Wortman, dressed as a police officer, driving a police vehicle, had pulled over Kristen Beaton and killed her, and then it appears that Miss O'Brien came upon that scene, stopped or was forced to stop, and she was killed as well. So Miss Dobson doesn't know whether she's going to be testifying, but I think it is important that we hear from the family members of these victims. In my experience with the Desmond inquiry, the times when people spoke about their lost loved ones provided some of the most powerful and poignant moments of the inquiry. And it gives us some context on the victims and can really lend emotional weight to the proceedings. It really ensures that everybody involved is focused on the issues, works hard, and is dedicated to ensuring that these things don't happen again and that appropriate recommendations are made as a result. It's also a cathartic experience in ways for the witness themselves. Testifying is a difficult thing to do, and particularly testifying in a formal inquiry setting. But I think that formal inquiry setting is a way that helps people process the trauma. And, like I said, it is a cathartic experience in some ways for the people testifying too. So, when they talk about trauma and PTSD and all this thing, you're supposed to, re-experience and process it in order to properly deal with it. So difficult though it may be for those individuals, I think they would see some benefits themselves. And then we as public, of course, have the benefit of getting the context. The other issue though is, in addition to the personal side of it, is this Alert Ready system. Now, this was unveiled in Canada in 2018, in April of 2018, by the federal government. Now, this is a notification that you receive on your mobile phone, and for anybody that has received one, they are very difficult to ignore, and you're certain to be aware of them. It was used in Canada 131 times in 2019, but not in Nova Scotia at all. In fact, it was only used in Nova Scotia once prior to the mass shooting, and that was to give an alert to everybody around Easter weekend of 2020 to comply with COVID restrictions and not visit one another. It was not used on the night of April 18th or the morning of April 19th, 2020. And instead, the RCMP issued some notifications on their provincial Twitter account, which has been roundly criticized by people that say, well, that wasn't the proper way to alert the public. Premier of Nova Scotia has said that the emergency measures team was in place and ready to issue an alert had the RCMP requested that, but that was not done. And so I did happen to see those tweets. I follow the RCMP Twitter account and did at the time as well. So I did see those tweets on the morning of the 19th, but it occurred to me when I saw them that I couldn't imagine, I don't know anybody else that I could be sure had seen them. If this had happened in Guysborough where I am, I couldn't think of any specific person that I would be sure would have seen tweets from the Nova Scotia RCMP account. And I'm sure the case was the same in Colchester County. Now, Global News did a piece on this, and they cited some Statistics Canada data that shows there's 22,000 households in Colchester County, and of them, 87% are supposed to have mobile phones, so about 19,000 of those households would have mobile devices and thus would have been alerted had an alert gone out. The number of Twitter followers for the RCMP Nova Scotia in Colchester County would maybe in the double digits. Certainly wouldn't be much more. So that was an issue. Now, because this was so publicized and so roundly criticized at the time, almost 2 years ago, people may presume that the emergency alert system has been examined and dealt with and improved considerably, but that would be a mistaken assumption. The alert system, like I say, when it was unveiled in 2018, it was stated at the time in the federal press release that it was to rapidly warn the public of imminent or unfolding hazards to life. But if you look on the website for the types of situations that are specifically mentioned, active shooter is not among them. They talk about fires, about chemical spills, air quality issues, natural disasters like hurricanes, storm surges, meteorites. They talk about Amber Alerts for missing children, but nothing to do with active shooters. In addition, there's no legislation, regulations, or any publicly available protocol documents that describe how the Alert Ready system should be used, or breaking down the various responsibilities. Who's supposed to draft the thing, who's supposed to issue it, how does the decision get made? So, that was something that people may have presumed was resolved, but is not. And we really need to hear from these witnesses to get the context, because in both cases, I know the Miss Dobson and Nick Beaton, the husband of Kristen Beaton, have both said if they had received an alert that Miss O'Brien and Miss Beaton would never have left the house, they would have stayed home and thus would have been safe. So here we have fairly clear instances of a situation, had it been handled properly, could have saved lives. So we need to hear that context. That needs to be done in testimony. We can't just rely on news reports or presumptions to come up with good recommendations. We need that testimony. Now, the fact that Ms. Dobson at this point doesn't know whether she's testifying, and we're 2 weeks away from the start, or less than 2 weeks away from the start of the proceedings, and the first part of the proceedings is supposed to deal with what happened. It's a little strange that they haven't lined up and scheduled witnesses at this stage. So it tells me, one of, three things. Either she's not going to testify, which to me would be inconceivable. It's an important issue. Secondly, she is going to testify and it just hasn't been scheduled yet. That would seem to have its own issues as well, since we're almost 2 years away from the incident and there's been multiple delays in the start of the inquiry, so you would think they would have this well planned out. The third possibility considered is maybe the plan is for Ms. Dobson and others like her to testify or to discuss their loved ones in other formats, like a round table discussion or some other forum. Again, I don't think that would be appropriate. These are really central issues to the Mass Casualty Commission, and so I think it's appropriate that they be done in the main stage and not put off to a secondary stage. I think it's important that the public see this, see the people testifying, and experience the emotional weight that brings. So this was something that came out just a couple of days ago in the CBC article. I thought it was important that it be raised. Kudos to Ms. Dobson for speaking out at this stage, and hopefully that'll be resolved and that we'll hear from her, from Nick Beaton, and get to the bottom of some of these issues with the alert ready system, which could be quite valuable, but it needs to be responsive. It needs to be something where every second counts. We can't be wasting time with confusion and uncertainty as to the protocol. So those are my thoughts on Ms. Dobson's comments on not being sure whether she's going to testify and the alert ready system. And so we'll see you next time.